this is also sexism, because yesterday I'm like, oh my God, Glenn Powell just says all the right shit. He's saving Hollywood. Jenna Ortega says something, and I'm like,
right.
Here we go. No, here's the thing. What they're doing is they're taking very, very generic common sense talking points that every YouTuber has been making since 2017, and they're repackaging it into an entire brand where they're just not as mentally deficient as the rest of the idiots in Hollywood.
Yeah, be it Glenn Powell or Jenna Ortega or Matt Smith, it seems like more and more Hollywood celebrities are now parroting very common sense takes that normal people have been saying for many years, and it's to rapturous applause. Yeah. So recently in an interview for Beetlejuice 2, Jenna Ortega was asked if she would star in a gender-swapped version of Edward Scissorhands, as the interview called it, Edith Scissorhands. And this is a movie that Tim Burton has been very adamant will never get a sequel.
I'm actually really annoyed that that interviewer even made that suggestion.
Edith Scissorhands?
Edith can go to hell. Okay? And that interviewer is shit.
In response, Jenna Ortega said she is not a fan of gender-swapped characters and that female leads should get their own stories. So let's listen to what she said in this interview.
She can be a different type of hands, not scissors. Okay, here we go.
No, you know what I would say about that specifically as well? I love that there's a lot more female leads nowadays. I think that's so special, but we should have our own. I don't like it when it's like a spin-off of, like, I don't want to see like Jamie Bond, I want to see just like another badass. So yeah, something like that. Definitely.
Literally every YouTuber for the last 10 years has been saying this.
And they were getting called sexist for saying it. Yes. Interesting how that works. But ironically, Daniel Craig, who played James Bond, agrees with Jenna Ortega's take. And he, in the past, has said, why would a woman play James Bond when there should be a part just as good as James Bond, but for a woman?
I don't want to see Janet Bourne either.
And Gal Gadot's character in Heart of Stone was also being compared to a female James Bond. And in response to that, she said, I wanted to show a great story about a female character who is doing it in the action genre. She is thriving, but at the same time, how many times have they just switched gender? They take a story that's all about the men and just change it to a woman and then shoot it. To me, it was so important in the DNA to make Heart of Stone different because men and women are different. They're built differently and they operate differently.
Ghostbusters 2016 comes to mind. Ocean's 8 comes to mind.
Doctor Who comes to mind.
So what's funny is I made a list before we went live of like movies that came out this year that leaned heavily into female leads. They might not necessarily have been aimed directly towards women, but what I realized is that the problem is this. They believe that the gender of the star is a marketing point. What men need to start doing is like a new movie starring a man. And that's not a selling point. But it would be funny if they started doing that. Yeah. They're like, look, Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, but it's Dr. Quinn, medicine man.
I'll die on the hill that feminism is condescension towards women, because basically the whole thing is like, could you believe that she is capable of doing it while being a woman?
Look, I disagree, and I want to push back on this because, they're saying something that's like, based that we agree with, and it's like a based take, but you're only allowed to push back on things like race swaps or gender swaps or what have you, insert any example, if you're pushing back on it in a way that's deemed acceptable and liberal. So you're only allowed to push back on gender swaps of male characters if you're doing it in defense of women. And not saying that here's what she's saying. She's saying women deserve their own leads. Well, really what you should be saying is that men deserve their own leads.
As well.
Right?
Yes.
Like that's what's being attacked right now is men being able to have male leads in movies that they're interested
I see what
in.
you're saying.
So why are we only allowed to attack that idea from the standpoint of defending women and female representation when we are 50% of the population? I find that grating. That like really annoys me.
Yeah.
Here's for some of the movies that came out this year that did lead women. Argyle, which me and Mary both liked. At least I liked it up until the third act. Madam Web, which was awful, but was a lot of fun because it was disgustingly bad. Challengers, Mean Girls, Furiosa was led by a woman, Maxine, Wicked Will Be, Night Bitch, which I posted about the trailer earlier, did not come out the way I was hoping to. Amy Adams put on some weight for that one, so good for her.
That's dedication.
Immaculate, Love Lies Bleeding, Drive Away Dolls, Lisa Frankenstein. Again, here's the thing. The franchises that will draw people to the box office tend to be the types of movies that are inherently male. Mission Impossible, James Bond, big budget, action-oriented films, Marvel. You kind of get a pass with Marvel because superheroes can be female as well more often. You're less weary of a female superhero than a female spy because a female spy feels like it's pandery already.
We have 20 Canadian dollars from Mr. Moose Knuckle. I've been noticing a strange trend where all these movies, video games, companies are vilifying the audience instead of taking criticism. Who would have guessed vilifying your audience would be a bad business decision?
Shocking.
Dude, I
Imagine my shock.
P-Tran, I did not forget Borderlands. That was like an ensemble cast more, so I left it off.
Well, no,
there.
you're right. When it's a white man starring in a movie, it tends to attract a general audience. It doesn't work the other way around. People want to see white dudes in action movies, period.
I don't know.
You can be mad about it all you want, but that's what people want to see.
I don't know about that exactly. It's probably, I mean, if it's predominantly white country, that I'd imagine that perhaps, but it's, I think the point that you made beforehand is a good one. That it's like she's not being based at all. Like she's like curtailing. You know, this is the thing about progressivism. It's like no one likes it. But I mean, we don't. But like, people have this like ingrained understanding that it must be appeased to at all moments anyway, and so like
yes.
it truly the based, and by based meaning like the, I don't know, like the truthful and like meaningful thing that she could have said at the moment would have been like, you know, we should really stop stealing these roles from guys.
Right. Yeah.
Because male need heroes and representation too. And it's like an underhanded gift towards women, if you can even categorize it
like,
as that.
Here's how gender swapping male leads to be female actually hurts women. Like, no, shut up.
Yeah,
and they say the same shit about race swaps. Like, actually, race swapping a white character to be black is really insulting black people.
Yeah.
Like, stop doing mental gymnastics and just admit that there's an anti-white sentiment behind race swapping a white character. That is very obvious to anyone with common sense.
And that's what
they're appropriating so-called anti-woke sentiments or takes into wokeness to make them acceptable, and that's what grinds my gears.
Yeah, that's what grinds my gears generally about like politics usually, and it's that, and to justify my beliefs, here is an African American woman to say exactly how I feel about the situation.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, if your conviction is good enough, like you should be able to say it as well. Like, I don't know, like this theatrics.
Stand on business.
Bad Boys did good this year. Why? Because it's Bad Boys and it's not Bad Girls. It's, because Will Smith and Martin Lawrence transcend the generation going all the way back to 1995. And when you have a formula that works, it does. Furiosa co-ops the Mad Max franchise and was 10 years too late, even if it wasn't a bad movie. And it wasn't. It was fine. Too slow for my taste, especially in comparison to Fury Road. But one of these things stuck to the formula and worked.
Right. Furiosa, of course, is an original character and isn't a gender swap. But it is still a Mad Max movie without Mad Max in it, and you're acting surprised that it didn't perform well. Like,
Deadpool and Wolverine did well because they stuck to the formula. Characters
they didn't make a Lady Deadpool movie.
Well, they put Lady Deadpool in it, but they didn't.
They put her in it, but it wasn't a Lady Deadpool movie.
Correct. Look.
And now a similar thing has happened with Matt Smith. saying that he is not on board with trigger warnings.
Again, this is what they're doing is they're taking the most like boilerplate take you could possibly have and repackaging it. Now, this is
It's
actually
kind of infuriating.
This one is more common amongst the old celebrities. Like the old celebrities will come out and be like, I don't know about those trigger warnings. There was Maggie Smith did this. A bunch of other celebrities, Stephen Fry, have done this.
But Matt Smith is a little bit more on the young side to be saying something like this. So,
but by the way, all these actors are represented by the same public relations agents. So if this is the biggest sign that wokeness, that progressivism is dying, they gotta reel it back slowly because like some people got psyoped like out of this universe, and it's just like it's a temporary transition to whatever insane psyop they cooked up next. Like
let's backtrack so everyone forgets how insane we were in the 2010s. But here's what he said. I'm not sure I'm on board with trigger warnings. It's okay to feel uncomfortable or provoked while looking at a painting or watching a play. But I worry everything's being dialed and dumbed down. We're telling audiences they're going to be scared before they watch something. Isn't being shocked, surprised, stirred the point? Too much policing of stories and being afraid to bring them out because a climate is a certain way is a shame. I don't know what that means, but he's basically saying that trigger warnings set people up to not be open to the piece of art that they're consuming. So
I agree with him. And the funny thing is, I actually liked Disparu's take on this a lot, which he said what it does is it actually builds it up in their mind and they think it's going to be worse than it is. So they spend the whole movie like clenched, waiting for it to happen. And then you don't actually enjoy the ride. And I do think the same thing kind of happens when people talk about wokeness in movies. They're like, they point out specific parts and you're like, you think it's going to be really bad. And usually it's cringy and annoying,
but it's overplayed.
But it's overplayed. Like a movie I watched recently, the movie we watched recently, The Crow, was one of the worst things I've ever seen. And it wasn't about wokeness. It was just an awful movie, right?
Yeah.
Like that tends to land with me a lot worse than incremental parts. It's one of the reasons why TV is actually worse for this type of stuff, because beat for beat, there's more time to put in those cringy moments through 8 episodes of a TV show than there are through a film.
You know, that's what happened to me with Queen's Gambit. It's a show that ultimately I ended up liking a lot, but in the beginning it just had this like woke inserted character like forced upon scene.
You mean the trans character?
Yeah, it was just so, and they gave this character like just such a like out of nowhere line where it just like pulled you out of whatever the narrative was, that I was like, I don't want to.
Well, it's the Batman is the best example of that. It's the white privilege line.
Oh my God.
Again, I hate to harp on that one, but it's like, as a movie, I liked it the first time I saw it. Upon reflection, it was too long, and that moment was enough to just take you out of a traditionally very like timeless storytelling, meaning like it didn't speak of a certain generation the way that the characters were talking, and then the line was just very 2020.
Yes.
So it takes you out of it. That's a more extreme example.
This feels like stolen valor to me. Like,
What?
we're in 2024. The conversation about
stolen valor.
like we're in current year. We're in 2024, and it took since 2014 for them to finally come around to common sense. The conversation about gender swaps was at its peak in 2016 when the female Ghostbusters came out. And mind you, Milo Yiannopoulos was literally banned from Twitter for talking about it. Yeah. That's actually like real internet history. And now it's taken this long for mainstream Hollywood celebrities to actually, you know, in a very politically correct way, reflect exactly what he was saying. Yeah. Just, you know, in a way that's more palatable for people to take in. And then trigger warnings. Like, again, I mean, like, I'm just going through the history. People were talking about trigger warnings at the exact same time, 2014 to 2016, when like Trigglypuff, that meme came out. Like,
wow.
Like trigger warnings were being talked about by this unacceptable, unclean group of people that we can't associate with.
Right.
And now the people that we approve of are talking about it, and we're like, oh, I hated trigger warnings the whole time. Like, That's what annoys me is like, oh,
Yes.
I feel
you
a
were
lot
never
of
on
this-
board with trigger warnings?
I feel like a lot of
Okay.
this comes back for the way that movies are pitched, which is like the elevator pitch, which is like, imagine like Mission Impossible, but with like a chick. Like imagine Jason Bourne, but with like a woman, right? It's like when you think of a movie like Peppermint, it's literally somebody who's like, it's like John Wick, right? But it's a girl. What? Like, and I thought that movie was fine, but that's a problem with the pitching in Hollywood.
And that's what
It's
I'm
just-
saying, that like feminism is condescension towards women, because again the premise is like, dude, and she did all this while having a vagina. Can you wrap your head around that? Impossible.
I can't entirely get on board with that because like feminism is anti-men. Like fundamentally on a much more fundamental
both.
level. Yes, it's anti-human, yes, but I feel like it's just being downplayed when we talk about gender swaps and race swaps, that ultimately race swaps are done because we want to see less white people. Okay, that's the reason why they're
Yeah,
done.
I mean,
And gender
they've
swaps are
admitted
done
as
because
much.
we want to see less men. It's an attack on those specific groups, but you're not allowed to point that out still.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.